Most people think the choices that change your life are loud and dramatic, the kind you remember like a car crash or a wedding day. Mine wasn't like that at all. Mine was quiet, polite, and everyone clapped for it. My name is Thomas Hale, and I'm 106 years old now, and if I'm honest with you, the decision everyone once called my smartest move is the one I still lie awake thinking about. When you get to my age, sleep comes in pieces. You drift off for an hour, then you wake up and stare at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. That's when the old memories show up. Not the big ones like wars or funerals, but the small ones. A kitchen table. A letter I never mailed. A train ticket I almost bought. I was 21 when I first felt that pull in my chest. That feeling that life might be bigger than the street I grew up on. I had dreams like any other boy. Nothing fancy. I wanted to see the ocean properly, not just in pictures. I wanted to write stories. I wanted to follow a girl named Evelyn out west because she talked about California like it was heaven itself. Sunlight, art shows, little apartments with music playing through open windows. Back then, everything felt possible. My friends talked about leaving town. One joined the Navy. Another took a bus to Chicago with $20 in his pocket. We used to sit on the hood of my father's old Ford and make plans like kings dividing up the world. But I also had my parents at the kitchen table every night, worrying about bills, about stability, about doing things the right way. My father worked at the mill his whole life. Same lunchbox, same route, same whistle at 5 o'clock. He wasn't a cruel man. Just careful. Careful people survive. That's what he believed. He used to say, "Tommy, excitement doesn't feed a family. A steady job does." It sounded sensible, responsible, hard to argue with. When Evelyn told me she was leaving for San Francisco with 2 of her friends, she asked if I wanted to come. I remember the way she said it so casually, like we were deciding what to have for dinner. "You could come too, Tom. We'll figure it out when we get there." My heart jumped so hard it hurt. I could picture it. The train. The coast. A tiny apartment with peeling paint and cheap coffee, and us laughing because we had nothing but each other. Then I pictured my mother's face if I told her I was leaving. I pictured my father shaking his head, disappointed but not surprised. I pictured failing, coming back broke. People whispering he thought he was special. Fear is very practical. It speaks in calm sentences. So instead of buying the ticket, I went down to the bank and accepted a job as a clerk. It came with a desk, a tie, and a handshake from a man with polished shoes. Stable work, he said. Room to grow. Everyone congratulated me. My mother cried a little and hugged me. My father slapped my back like I'd won a medal. Even the neighbors said, "Smart choice, Tom. You're set for life." And for a while it did feel good. There's comfort in approval. It wraps around you like a blanket. You think, maybe this is what being an adult is. Maybe this is what responsible looks like. Evelyn left without me. She wrote once from California. Said the city smelled like salt and bread. Said she'd found a little job at a cafe near the water. She asked how I was. I meant to reply. I put the letter in my drawer and thought I'll write back tonight when I have more time. I never did. That became a habit in my life. I'll do it later. Later became my favorite word. It sounded so harmless, so reasonable. When my friends planned a road trip, I said maybe next year. When someone mentioned night classes in art, I said when things slow down. When I thought about traveling, I told myself after I save a little more. There was always a later. The bank turned into 20 years before I even noticed. Same building, same desk, different calendar on the wall. I got married to a kind woman named Ruth. She had soft hands and a quiet laugh. We had 2 boys. We bought a small house with a patch of grass out front. From the outside, my life looked solid, respectable, safe, and most days it was fine. Truly, I don't want to lie and say I was miserable. I wasn't. There were Sunday breakfasts with pancakes. There were birthdays with paper hats. There was Ruth humming while she washed dishes. But every now and then, usually late at night, I'd feel this strange emptiness. Like I'd forgotten something important. Like I'd left the stove on somewhere far away. I'd sit at the edge of the bed and think, is this all there is? Then the alarm would ring, and I'd put on my tie and the feeling would fade again. Life has a way of smoothing over your doubts if you stay busy enough. There were small sacrifices I barely noticed at the time. The company asked me to work late, so I missed my son's school play. They'll have another one, I said. When Ruth suggested we take a short trip to the coast, I said we should save the money. When an old friend invited me to visit him out west, I told him maybe someday. I kept choosing the safe option. Every time. Like a reflex, each choice by itself was tiny. Nothing dramatic. But stacked together, year after year, they built a wall around me. I remember one evening very clearly. I was about 45. I came home late, loosened my tie, and found Ruth sitting alone at the kitchen table. The boys were already asleep. She had 2 cups of tea out, one for her and one for me. She said, "Tom, do you ever feel like we're just waiting for something?" I laughed it off. Told her that's just how life is. Work now, relax later. She nodded, but her eyes looked tired. I think about that moment a lot now, how easily I brushed it aside. Early warning signs don't shout. They whisper. Sometimes it was just a quiet thought while staring out the bus window. Sometimes it was jealousy when I heard someone talk about a place they'd visited. Sometimes it was opening an old drawer and finding Evelyn's letter, the paper yellow and soft. I'd hold it and feel something twist inside me. Then I'd put it back and say, that was a long time ago. No use thinking about it. Years rolled on. My parents passed. The boys grew up and moved away. The house got quieter. The bank gave me a gold watch when I retired. They called me dependable, loyal, a good man. Everyone shook my hand again. I smiled for the picture. That night, I put the watch in a drawer and sat alone in the living room. The silence was so thick I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. For the first time in my life, there was no later left. No job to blame. No schedule. No excuses. If I wanted to travel, I could. If I wanted to paint, I could. If I wanted to write, I could. But something strange had happened. I didn't know how anymore. All those years of postponing had made me small, careful, afraid of anything unfamiliar. The world felt bigger now, and I felt older inside than my age. Ruth tried to get me out of the house. She'd say, "Let's take the train somewhere, Tom." Anywhere. But I'd worry about money, about comfort, about what if something went wrong. I'd spent a lifetime practicing caution. It doesn't leave you overnight. Then, she got sick. It was slow at first. Doctor visits, little bottles of pills, then hospital rooms with that clean smell and machines beeping softly. I sat beside her bed holding her hand and thinking about all the trips we never took, all the evenings I came home too tired to talk, all the times she said, "Maybe someday." Someday is a cruel word when you're watching someone fade. After she passed, the house felt enormous. Every room echoed. I'd make 1 cup of coffee instead of 2, and stand there not knowing what to do with the extra mug. That's when the regrets started coming clearly, like old friends knocking at the door. Not just Evelyn. Not just California. Everything. The drawings I stopped making. The letters I didn't write. The chances I declined because they seemed impractical. None of those things ruined my life. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that they would have made it fuller. There's a difference between a life that works and a life that feels alive. I chose the one that worked. Now at 106, I sit by the window most mornings with a blanket over my knees. The street is quieter than it used to be. New families live in the houses. Kids I don't recognize ride bikes past the gate. Sometimes I imagine that young man I used to be, standing at the station with a suitcase, heart pounding, wondering whether to step onto that train. I want to reach back and tell him something gentle, not to scold him, not to shame him, just to say, it's okay to be a little foolish. It's okay to want more than safety. Because safety is comfortable, yes, but it can also be a cage if you never open the door. I understand now that fear dressed itself up as responsibility in my life. It wore a tie and spoke politely, and everyone praised it. I mistook that praise for happiness. Maybe if I had taken 1 or 2 risks, nothing terrible would have happened. Maybe I would have failed. Maybe I would have come home broke. But I would have known. That's what stays with you at night. Not the mistakes you made, but the doors you never opened. So when I sit here talking to you, I'm not trying to give advice like some expert. I'm just an old man remembering his kitchen table, his wife's tea getting cold, a letter in a drawer, a train leaving without him. If you ever feel that quiet tug in your chest, that small voice saying there might be something more, don't brush it aside the way I did. Sometimes that little voice is just your life asking to be lived. And I've learned very slowly that later is not a promise. It's just a word we use to make today easier.